Welcome back to Sex Crimes Defense Podcast with Chance and Jay. Chance Oberstein is a criminal defense attorney in California. I'm a media professional. This podcast is for informational purposes only and is not intended to be used as legal advice. This episode discusses allegations reported publicly against Congressman Eric Swalwell. These allegations remain disputed, and no criminal conviction has been reported. All individuals discussed are presumed innocent unless proven guilty in court.
Amen.
So let's talk about Eric Swalwell. Kick it off, Chance.
Well, this is a good introduction, and most importantly, as you said, these allegations and investigations at this stage are not convictions, and he, Mr. Swalwell, has denied any wrongdoing. But I think before we even start, for those who may not know too much about him, maybe we should talk a little bit about his background, and let me just start off by doing that, and then you can chime in. But it seems to me that we're talking about a Democratic congressman from California, and he's known nationally for his House Intelligence Committee work, his frequent cable news appearances, presidential campaign in 2020, and his vocal criticism of Donald Trump. And this all goes to his political ambitions and reputation, because he's seen as an ambitious and media-savvy congressman. He was a rising Democratic, or a rising Democratic figure at least, and he was a polarizing public image because of the stances he took. In recent months, though, the focus has shifted dramatically from politics to allegations of misconduct. And I think that's where I think you come in. But I want to say at this point, before we get into the social media aspects of it, multiple women have accused Swalwell of misconduct. So tell me a little bit about that.
Well, and I want to say that I think because we're media savvy, this is a media society, and this is the Sex Crimes Defense Podcast, where we not only try to be fair, but paint a full picture. Given what we know and what we've seen, I think we've reached that tipping point of public opinion where we've seen too much of a pattern to ignore. And in fact, we saw such a tipping point that he did resign. In resigning, he has put his party into turmoil in California, and I'm not weighing in on my political stance, but stepping down in California doesn't help the current state of things for Democrats, given some of the other politics going on. But more importantly is his family. He has apologized. I'm reading a quote. "I'm deeply sorry to my family, staff, and constituents for mistakes in judgment I've made in my past. I will fight the serious false allegations made against me. However, I must take responsibility and ownership for the mistakes I did make." I think what also happens in public opinion is when we hear an apology like this, we're thinking, okay, well, you did something bad enough to resign your office and publicly apologize to your family and your children. Something happened beyond just a one-time indiscretion.
Well, he also put on hold his run for the governorship, which is what I thought you were going to say and what I was stalling on.
Oh, okay.
But
Okay.
and he's not a senator; he's a congressman who's
Thank you.
But okay, these allegations involve multiple women accusing him of misconduct. That apology sounds like misconduct. Now, public reports allege that he is facing allegations involving potential sex crimes, which is why he's on our radar, primarily sexual assault. And these reported allegations include a former staffer accused him of sexually assaulting her on one or two occasions, including one incident in which she alleged she was intoxicated and unable to consent. An additional woman reportedly accused him of various forms of sexual misconduct, including unwanted touching, unsolicited explicit messages, and sending nude photographs. Now, the House Ethics Committee, if there is such a thing, has announced that an investigation into allegations that he engaged in sexual misconduct including towards an employee working under his supervision, is going on. I don't know how his resignation impacts that, but reports also indicate that the prosecutors in Manhattan are reviewing at least one sexual assault allegation. So it's not just a matter of him saying, look, I'm sorry, and this was, just bad conduct. Some of these are extremely serious allegations.
Yeah, and I do want to say, it does seem, again, the way he's stepping down. Nancy Pelosi's mentioned that he was kind of her golden boy. Him stepping down seems like a pretty big deal in California politics. Even those that have donated for him and backed him, the person whose mansion he was staying in, all are kind of abandoning ship. It's very bad times.
Well, here's what I don't understand, and I can't it's getting a little hard to wrap my head around this, but he had this incredible rise in the party and great support, and to the point where he could put himself out there as someone who could be elected governor of the state of California. That's a big deal. And you know what? It is a big deal. And all of a sudden all these things come out, right before the election.
Correct. It is fair game to treat this as a political maneuver or an anti-political maneuver. That's fair. But I don't think it passes the sniff test because of the allegations and the number of victims. And I just want to say this too, is that unlike most podcasts that have already would have said disgusting and all these terrible slimy slams against him, that's not what we're here to do. What I'm starting to wonder too, because there's already another story about Michael Jackson, is it possible that there's this dark duality to being a strong personality, and then there's this really hard to accept side that does things? Bill Cosby, and this case is similar to Bill Cosby. I'm not going to give that to Harvey Weinstein. May have had charisma. I don't know about it.
Yeah, right. Well,
but he was extremely effective at what he did, although I think he was more of a strong man.
Well,
than
this is the yin and yang of the public vortex. I mean, one day you're wonderful, and the next day you're a monster. Okay, and this thing
Russell
seems
Brand
to be the way.
Being crucified right now. Yeah,
right.
It's May. And for anybody listening, it's May 2026. So we are. Chance, I want to go back to this before we go into the allegations. What's the status of charges?
Well, there is no charges. The status is that he's being investigated. But I mean, if you really want to frame it legally, the allegations remain unproven. These are allegations and investigations, not convictions. And I could not verify at this point any filed charges. So we're nowhere right now. We're in whatever this is. We're in the beginning stages, and he has publicly denied the allegations and characterized them as false and politically motivated.
So, okay, I'm gonna add another. So we're building a rope bridge to the other side because we don't have a lot to go on. However, we do have a lot to go on. There is a lot of media coverage, articles, etc. That's
Videos,
what I'm getting. And that's where I'm getting my
yeah.
information. Yes, I'm getting my information from several sources in the public eye. And it would seem that if there is a case, there will be two, Los Angeles and New York. Do you see that?
Yeah, I do. Coast to coast. The thing that really is bothersome, though, is he's been around for years and years and years. How does he rise like that and get into a position to do what he was about to do, like run for the position of governor in the state of California? And never before have we heard of any of this. I mean, I'm sure that it's been out there. I mean, things about infidelity, affairs, that kind of stuff. Okay. But this is heavy. How come all of a sudden this?
All right, I'm gonna give a couple theories. One is that, yeah, standing up to power is tough, and the other is that I'm sure there are other incidents that may or may not be as rough as some of the ones we're going to talk about. Because the ones in front of me, you've got Lana Drews, that name is out there. You've got former staffer, that's out there. She's anonymous. Then you've got Nikki Const, which is an ex-flame of former New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio. She had a run-in. You've got there was one that got a DM, and then there's this defense lawyer. That anyways, there's four main women, but what I want to say is that I really do believe there's going to be some lighter incidences out there
A lot of
that
them.
probably aren't criminal.
Well, yeah, I think there are. And I think that there's videos out there and pictures out there and stories out there, things that we weren't aware of until now that have been happening over time, all suggesting some kind of corroboration with what's being alleged at this point. But I also want to emphasize that, cases involving public officials such as he are rarely just legal investigations. They become simultaneous battles over evidence, power, credibility, politics, and public perception, as we're just speaking about right now. And these are difficult things to untangle and investigate. Just very, 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 very difficult. And I mean, let's think about it for a minute. Just in terms of in legal thought, let's think about it for a moment. What are the standards of proof? I mean, if you think about it, these cases unfold simultaneously in criminal investigations, ethics proceedings, civil litigation, and they're taken upon the media. There's a court of a media out there.
Right. To think of this legally, right? I cover kind of social impact, and you cover legal. If I was going to think of this legally, then I guess I would ask, where are the rape kits? Right? Because if you were raped, you'd go get and again, this is not for anybody who's listening, this is not a judgment, but rather I think a legal defense question is, did you get a rape? If you thought you were raped, did you get a rape kit? If you didn't, why didn't you? Would be called into question to be a guess. Am I right about that kind of thing?
Well, I mean, first first the complaint has to come, the phone call to the police before you get to the rape kit. Where's the complaint?
Right. Thank you. Okay,
Yeah.
there we go. Thank you. You're the attorney. Okay, so were there any complaints to the police?
Well, no. That's So here's the
None.
thing. At least
Wow.
none that I'm aware of, and that's why
That's a problem.
It's problematic.
That's a problem.
And what you're talking about is this emotional, immediate response to these things, like you just said. Okay, there's an emotional and immediate response to that, because that's a standard. That's kind of a standard of proof for social media. But if you look at the standard of proof, if you look in a criminal court, it's beyond a reasonable doubt. And if you look in a civil court, it's the preponderance of the evidence, which is a much lesser standard. If you look at ethics committees and conduct rules and institutional standards, more diminished. But the court of public opinion, oh my God, it's like emotional and immediate and terrible and harsh.
Well, and
we haven't even gotten to allegations yet, and that is exactly where we are.
for the record, this is actually another reason we're doing this podcast, is that I don't agree with a lot of public opinion, many of the videos that I see, I think the way people talk about this stuff is so unrealistic and way overly judgmental that it's kind of absurd. And yet with this case, I can't possibly side with him. I
Well,
don't.
I think it's
My
because
opinion.
of some of the things that have been said, alleged. I think it's because of some of the videos that have been posted. I mean, a lot of them are just really damning, in terms of personal conduct. But, you know, when you get into these situations, it's always a witness credibility battle. I mean, these cases frequently depend heavily on one, testimony, recollection, and credibility assessments. So if you think about it and you look at each and every allegation that's made, you know, we're not talking about the here and now or it happened yesterday and it was reported immediately. We're talking about recollection and credibility assessments. And those things are really gonna shape what's to come.
You want to come back for part 2 and we'll get into the allegations?
Sure.
All right. Please do join us for part 2 of discussing Eric Swalwell. You've been listening to Sex Crimes Defense Podcast. See you on part 2.
Okay.